welcome one and all to the Ferret and Raccoon podcast, episode 165. I am your one and only host for this podcast, the Angry Raccoon, bringing you the last podcast of April 2021. And boy, am I glad to see the end of April, because it has been a rough couple of weeks and days for me and for a lot of people as well. Obviously, there's a lot of situations going on in the world in reference to the virus, the vaccine, and other worldly events that just aren't great. In regards to me, it's been a stressful couple of days/weeks. I don't want to get into too many details because I'd imagine my life and my struggles, or first world problems, if you want to put it that way, are probably not what people have come here to listen to. But just to put it out there, it's been stressful. Work has been pretty stressful, and there's been a lot of change-ups in terms of my, structure and routine. So it's been pretty tricky to get things done, and that's kind of worried me and stressed me out a little bit. So I'm actually really glad to be doing the podcast because it almost didn't get made. I honestly wasn't feeling doing it. And what I mean by doing it is the actual making it, or writing it more accurately. I like doing the podcast, don't get me wrong. But I didn't really want to give you guys a lazy podcast. So hopefully you guys enjoy this podcast. It did take a little bit out of me, but hopefully we'll be back for the next podcast, which, it should be good. But let's get straight into it because we've got a little bit of stuff to talk about. There wasn't too much that really had me interested or exciting, and this podcast is kind of like a mixed bag between just random, creative, funny stuff. But let's get into it. But the first thing we're going to talk about is actually some good news, and that is the fact that in a couple of podcasts ago, I talked about how Sony was going to be shutting down its PlayStation 3 and PSP PlayStation stores, to which they've now announced and decided that they're going to keep them online and operational, which is really good to hear because Sony has really made the right decision. They confirmed this on their blog, and they essentially stated by saying, recently we notified players the PlayStation Store for PlayStation 3 and PS Vita devices was planned to end this summer. Upon further recognition, however, it's clear we made the wrong decision here. So today I'm happy to say that we will be keeping the PlayStation stores operational for PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita devices. PSP I can't even read that. Functionalities will retire on July the 2nd, 2021 as planned. Sorry, I kind of fumbled that last sentence. Where I was reading it from, it's not quite clear, so that's a mistake on my behalf. But the actual blog itself that confirms this information is going to be in the description and download link if you want to read the whole thing. And it's basically just brief. But this is really, really wonderful news for everyone who, is a gamer, fanboys on PlayStation, just the game industry in general, because I would imagine, because I like to speculate in these kinds of things, and I have been kind of hard on Sony because they've been making a lot of odd decisions of recently, but I would imagine that the only reason they've chosen not to shut down the stores is because of the sheer negative press they were receiving from media outlets and fans in general. It was not good. And the thing that still doesn't make sense to me is that Sony were the only ones that wanted to shut it down. I don't think there was anyone who was legitimately on Twitter screaming and shouting or making YouTube videos going, we need to shut down the PlayStation store for PlayStation 3. So it still is very odd when you look back at it to some extent. Plus, I'm sure the fact that Xbox was keeping their store live and also making very clear points about game preservation on their Twitter, which a lot of people then gave Microsoft or Xbox positive attention, most likely factored into Sony's decision to keep their own PlayStation Store up, because if I know Sony by anything, they want to appease the Western markets by any means necessary, which obviously is quite true because most Westerners complained about this, or not even complained, understandably said it was not a good thing to do, and they abide by our opinions. So that's interesting. So clearly, in future reference, if we don't like something, we just got to say we don't like it, and Sony will abide by us. which is both a interesting and not great thing. But it's also worth noting as well that the PSP store will be shutting down, which that's not as big of a deal, mainly because you can get pretty much every PSP game on the PS Vita store, which in turn means that the PS Vita is now the only place where you can download PSP games. So the value of PS Vitas is going to go up for collectors and, people getting into video games. So I would suggest possibly trying to get a PS Vita now while you still can. But I'm glad I already have one because, I'm just that much of a boss. But let's actually move on to trailers now. And we've got quite a few trailers that are just all over the place in terms of potential and just, I don't know, just kind of in their own world, which I guess is good. The first one I want to talk about is Army of the Dead, which is going to be directed by Zack Snyder. Now, I'm just going to be frank and just say this first. I don't think Zack Snyder is that good of a director. I hate his remake of Dawn of the Dead. I think it's absolutely atrocious. And I don't see why they're making this film. It has nothing to do with George A. Romero. It kind of feels a little bit disrespectful to name it that way. Almost as if Zack Snyder feels like he has the clout to continue the legend, the man, the myth's work. But at the same time, this trailer has some interesting stuff in it, which I guess is worth talking about because it's great that it's doing something different to some extent with the Of the Dead series. It feels like it is taking influence from other films such as, Day of the Dead, Land of the Dead, as well as Dead Rising 2. Dead Rising 2 takes place kind of in a shopping mall, kind of casino-ish area, so it does remind me of that, and there are zombies and other situations that do theme around that kind of Las Vegas casino theme, which is fine, but the whole idea of a sectioned off Las Vegas crawling with somewhat intelligent zombies while a group is on a heist mission and they have to survive at the same time, it's a rather original yet silly concept, and that's both a good thing because it does make it stand out to other zombie films. I mean, with that description, you can compare it to, I guess, Zombieland. But at the same time, it's a little hard to tell how much of it is tongue-in-cheek and what's meant to be serious. Like, is this meant to be an outright comedy, so to speak? Is this, meant to be, serious with some, more comedic elements to some extent? It's a little tricky to say because the concept or I guess ideas that I do like, for example, is the zombies wearing the costumes of when they were working at Las Vegas is, a great idea, but that CGI tiger was just laughably bad in almost every kind of way. It looked awful in terms of the CGI. The line about it was awful and it just wasn't needed. It was hard to tell. This is honestly not a film I'm ever going to watch because of the reasons I stated earlier, but I can understand why people are interested in it. Zack Snyder has a bit of clout to him. I think he's a generally nice guy. I'm just not a fan of his work. But, it's just another dumb action movie, much like, what was the film? Godzilla vs. King Kong, which, did flop despite people enjoying it. But I think people are just very desperate and very starved for these dumb, stupid blockbusters that they will give anything a good rating or hype over anything. Meanwhile, I'm hyping over true art, with my pretentious self. But let's move on to the next trailer, which kind of is in the same vein, but once again, interesting stuff, is The Conjuring with The Devil Made Me Do It, which is an awful sub-name. But yeah, besides the bad title and the obnoxious jump scares that are throughout this whole trailer, which almost kind of is a slap to the face to the original film, which was actually a pretty enjoyable horror film when you look back at it, and especially when you compare it to, the other Conjuring films and all the other spin-offs like The Nun and Annabelle, and don't even want to think about it. But yeah, there's a few interesting concepts. One idea I really do like is the whole idea that possession and the devil is actually being brought up and kind of discussed in a court case regarding, a murder, which is honestly a really cool concept to think about, and I would honestly watch a whole film about that if they ever did it. But I know this is going to be one thing that they gloss over in the trailer, because obviously we've got to have the spooky jump scares. Speaking of jump scares, I think the demon in the waterbed, that's kind of neat. I haven't really seen that before. It does remind me a little bit of Nightmare on Elm Street and a few other visuals. Like, it's not an original visual of, like, you know, a face appearing through a sort of solid object that's now, you know, not really liquid, but I guess more translucent, or whatever you want to call it. And I guess the whole idea of Lorraine, I forget their second name, you know, kind of more being in a dangerous situation, you know, the demon's so powerful, maybe she can't handle it, you know, that's kind of interesting for the series. But I have a feeling the way they're going about it with the whole, you know, like, she runs, you know, almost is about to run off the edge of the cliff, and like the demon then grabs her, and it's like, what is going on there? Like kind of seems a bit stupid. I'm all for like more psychological stuff, but that was just a bit silly. And also that whole concept when she's about to run off the bridge, it reminded me a lot of Satoshi Kon's Paprika. So I wonder if they're going to rip off that film. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure some people enjoy it. I found it quite laughable, to be honest, towards the end of the trailer, when it just became special effects and just jump scares and, oh, look how scary this is. Hopefully you guys probably find it as funny as I did. Next trailer we're going to talk about is for something I honestly thought wasn't going to happen given the current global situation of the world, and that is going to be for Love, Death Plus and Robots Volume 2 or Season 2, however you want to refer to it. This is the official trailer for it, and in theory this series should be like my favorite thing ever made, and it kind of is to some extent. I mean, I love animation, I love anthologies, and I love original storytelling. These are, I think, maybe the few things I definitely harp on or will criticize other things for not being or doing, more accurately, the original storytelling. But I didn't really like the first season, unfortunately, or first volume. Now, don't get me wrong, there were good moments and there were some strong moments in there, but for me, it was too much of a messy, mixed bag. And yes, I understand it's an anthology, it's going to be, you know, all over the place. I get that. But bear with me when I say this, in that sense where I feel like it lacked variety with how messy and how mixed it was. My main criticism of the first season, and this is a very small criticism, is that there were way too many episodes that were just boring CGI stories that focused on like realistic CGI. It was a bit frustrating every time you saw a new CGI story and it was just about robots or the same thing, or we got to show sex scenes and show how well we can render the face, and it got a bit annoying because most of those episodes were really boring and bad, and they had no style. They all looked the same. Like, if you told me they were done by the same person, I would believe you. With very few exceptions, like the episode The Witness, which is fantastic in its visuals and its style. It's the only CGI that actually has a distinct look to it, despite the ending not being great. And I think there was one of the last ones was actually pretty interesting, but that was kind of generic CGI. Episodes like Helping Hands was absolutely awful. I'm surprised it won an award, given how awful it was, but I think it won an award for how it looked, which, you know, once again, it's a matter of style over substance. But yeah, and that's another thing I will say as well. The trailer is very misleading. It does say the award-winning series, which is not correct. Love, Death and Robots has not won any awards. Various animations within Love, Death and Robots has won awards, yeah? So it's not an award-winning show, it has award-winning material within it. So that was a bit cheeky for them to do that. And this is why you always do your research, guys, so you don't end up being a fool on the podcast you make every 2 weeks. But I'll be honest, I'm actually really hopeful for this season. I really am. I'm actually pretty excited for it. And the trailer was, interestingly, it was very calmly paced and really grand compared to the first trailer, which was so in your face. It was so like, look at this blood, look at this sex, and oh my god. You know, it was very fast paced and very and then when you actually watch the season, about 10 of those episodes, no, I would say maybe even 7 of the 18 episodes really had that kind of energy or craziness to them. The Witness is probably one of the only episodes that I would say kind of has every little bit of, Love, Death, and Robots to some extent, but not that that's what every short has to be about. It was, I'd imagine the brief is either love, either death, or either robots. But yeah, I'm very interested in this series, and it does give me a lot of hope for this season or the next season, because they have confirmed the third one. And even within the trailer, they showed more clips from episodes that were in a more like kind of stylistic and more varied look, mainly with the CGI. Like, there wasn't any that looked the same. Like, I could tell that I was clearly seeing the style of 8 episodes and not just 2 blending in. But it is interesting, and I guess you can't really talk about this trailer and kind of, I can't really, say, oh, at 37 seconds, that looked good. No, because that would just be boring, and I'm not one of those YouTubers. But I guess my hopes for this season are, a more varied art style. No 2 episodes, in my opinion, should look the same. And I'm mainly talking about... Sorry, I want to apologize for the doorbell and my dog screaming. And I'm mainly talking about CGI. Because we need to stop the whole, we got to make realistic CGI. That should not be a thing. I do not understand the idea of creative freedom, like literally being given creative freedom, and you make the most generic looking thing ever. That baffles me. But I digress. Longer episodes, if need be. Now, I'm not saying I want every episode to be super long. Some episodes are perfect being 8 minutes long, 4 minutes long, 10 minutes long. But I want some of the episodes to have the freedom to be 20 minutes if they need to be. Because it's an anthology series. It's made by different creators. It's all going to be varied. Season 1 was very odd because no episode was longer than 17 minutes long, which was an odd limit to set, as I feel a few episodes were really held back by that. Like, there were a few, or at least one episode, the episodes I'm mainly talking about is Good Hunting. I feel like that episode needed like a minute more, or like a scene more. It kind of felt like something was missing. Like we missed a scene, which I'd imagine they might have taken out due to the weird limitation. But yeah, and I guess the last thing as well that I definitely want is, I guess, deeper concepts. Because kind of skimming through season 1, very few episodes like challenged or made you think. Now, I'm not saying we can't have fun episodes, silly episodes that are just outright just creative violence and gore. I'm not saying we can't have that. We should have that. That's the whole point of an anthology. But very few episodes actually were as deep as they thought they were, or tried to make, actual points. The episode, I believe it's called 3 Robots, is ironically one of the dumbest episodes, and it tries to be very satirical, and it tries to be very tries to have so much commentary in it, and it just comes off being like just really boring and stupid, compared to episodes like Zima Blue, which is simply just a work of art and is fantastic and is the best animation in season 1. If you're going to watch anything from Love, Death, and Robots, I would recommend watching, literally the 3 episodes I mentioned: The Witness, Good Hunting, and Zima Blue. There's a few other ones. The one with the monster is the monsters fighting is decent, but turn it off after the monster fight. Right, we got a couple other mentions to do real quick. These are trailers I definitely want you to watch and kind of know about. And the first one is going to be for Shrek 2 Retold. Now, some of you may be confused about Shrek 2 Retold. Now, a couple years ago, the YouTuber, content creator, website, whatever you want to call them, 3GI, got together a bunch of animators, content creators, makers, and each one of them, over 200, all recreated a scene from DreamWorks' Shrek. And they turned it into a movie, and you can go watch that on YouTube. It's a visual... I was going to say nightmare there for a sec. It's a visual spectacle in just variation and just outright craziness. And now they have confirmed they actually are going to be doing Shrek 2 Retold. Now, low-key, I actually knew that this was happening. This wasn't a secret or anything, but I knew this was happening because two of my favorite animators have done a scene for it, which I'm really happy to see them get more promoted and do stuff and just be in the film. But yeah, the teaser trailer doesn't really show you anything too much, but I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to tell you this now. It most likely will be the video of the episode when it does release, so be prepared. And also, Shrek 2 is my favorite of the films, so I'm really interested to see what they're going to do with this film. And just something worth knowing, and the last one I want to talk about is going to be for the Friday Night Funkin', the full-ass game Kickstarter trailer. Now, I'd imagine a lot of you probably know of the game Friday Night Funkin', rhythm game, essentially where you play as the boyfriend or Funk, essentially trying to win over his girlfriend or impress his girlfriend or battle various adversaries in order to get to the girl or the girlfriend. And it's a really fun, quaint, unique, small little Newgrounds game that really blew up towards the end of the year and is still pretty popular as they are updating it every now and then with new levels, new songs, new characters and that. And it is a nice kind of homage and reference fest to a lot of smaller animators. I mean, for example, Sir Palo's characters are in there. Lemon Demon makes a cameo. The Tank Man or Tank Guy, the literal inception of Newgrounds, is in the game now. And yeah, the Kickstarter itself is going pretty well. They've already got their money, so the game is going to be made in a full capacity. I think at the time of recording, it's just hit 1 million in terms of what it's made, in terms of backers and money or whatever you want to refer to it as. And I am linking this to you because for two reasons. One, so if you want to, you can go support it. And two, just so you know what the hell this game is. I would imagine some people have probably seen it and not really known what it is, or heard music from it and not really known what it is. And yeah, I would love for this game to make as much money as possible. Hopefully the game to be fantastic and be ported to as many systems as possible. But I'm also hoping for one thing in particular, or two things more accurately, that it gets all its stretch goals so the game can be as full as it needs to be, as well as it probably won't happen, but it'd be amazing if it did, if it reaches its 3 million goal. Because they've said if they hit more than 3 million, they will do a PS1 port physically, which is amazing if that actually does happen. But we'll see. They've still got over 20 days to get to 3 million, so who knows? Maybe it will be the most successful Kickstarter/kickstarted game in recent history, but we shall see. But yeah, last two trailers for you to, I guess, just kind of look up. Link in the description and download link. Everything will be there, including the video of the episode, which is going to be from the Chemical Brothers with The Darkness You Fear. This music video kind of blends in with, I guess, trying to be positive and other aspects in which how we are, I guess, as a whole feeling in terms of, you know, lockdown, the virus, other situations, things being different, the new normal, as some people want to call it, and kind of just finding some kind of positivity with this supposed darkness. The visuals for the music video are really unique and really fantastic. I think they kind of definitely would fit and suit a lot of things I've been talking about in terms of variation and creativity. But yeah, that's pretty much going to end this podcast. As I alluded to in the beginning, next podcast will be up in May. And one thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing two themed podcasts, which I am dubbing as Anime. So essentially, we will be talking about anime for our discussions and maybe in some other areas as well. Hopefully, I will be able to get some people on the podcast because it'd be nice for you guys to have a break from just hearing me, as well as hearing other people's opinions, perspectives, and hopefully recommendations, which is a nice little hint. But until then, I guess I will end this podcast like I always do by saying I was the Angry Raccoon, and I will see you on the next podcast.